sat on the kitchen table.
It's sat on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Let me just do this. I'm just going to pop this through.
Oh, I was quite enjoying that.
Where is it? I am listening. I'm just looking to see if I can put this through the transcriber, but I don't know if I can. So don't worry. I'm here. I'm listening.
I think if we need it transcribed, I was going to say a completely different verb. If we need it transcribed, then we can find a way to.
We'll just listen to it again.
I can put the recording of the Zoom through the transcription. It's fine. It's just I have like a tool to do it live, but I can't remember what the button is. So,
okay.
How are you both?
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
We had an hour this morning with the SEND officer.
Okay.
Who
remains nice.
Okay.
Even in meeting 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has got the EP to strengthen his advice so that additional provision will be in section F.
Alternative provision,
sorry. So because she was under pressure from her line managers not to have it in.
Okay.
And so she'd moved it, and he has said, no, I really think the implication of my advice is that provision is required and is essential. So that's encouraging.
So she was the person who said, I didn't think the implication was very useful, so I've got him to strengthen it and say what he actually meant.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's encouraging.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
So that's good. I mean, I imagine you've seen this many, many times. So the scenario is that theoretically, the council have said to her, we want this signed off tomorrow, i.e. they've come to the end of their, whatever it is, the 3-month period from, saying yes to having it signed up. But she is only sending out the amended draft for consultation to 3 colleges that she's very confident will say no, and to 1 post-16 special needs provision, which is ironically attached to the secondary where Orly did go to school for a while before it all started going pear-shaped, who have said to her over the phone that special provision unit is full, but she's hoping to talk to him to say, well, would you be, once you've seen the requirement, would you be willing to then apply to the council for the funding for an extra place to include the alternative provision and the likelihood of starting with Orly having one-to-one tutoring at home provided by an external provider. Our history with him is disappointing. He's, a very, very overworked, under-resourced head of SEND for the whole school. He also has some teaching responsibilities or something, which is nuts.
He just hasn't got enough time.
So, and we warned her, and she's had exactly the same experience with him of never getting hold of him. Yeah. He says, well, I can give you 10 minutes at 4 o'clock. And then at 1 minute to 4, he texts her and says, sorry, actually, I've got to go, all of that crap.
Yeah.
So if it may be that tomorrow what will happen is she will be told, we want this signed off without a named provider, in which case we remain in her in that sort of limbo place, while we're waiting for the consultation to come back, and it might then get amended. But she said, there are 36 cases due to be signed off tomorrow. And she said some of them have only been introduced to in the last 48 hours. So that isn't going to happen. So she's promised to keep us posted as to whether she comes under pressure on that. And then the CAMS, you've been asked.
Yeah, so she's really listened to us, which is great. And she has asked me if I will go back to the psychiatrist that we've relatively recently started seeing through CAMS to ask if he would write a letter to strengthen the expectation that Orly will not manage in a standard college. that actually is there mental health reinforcement of the need for one-to-one tutor at home as a start?
Yeah. And have you done that yet?
No, we had the meeting at 8 o'clock this morning.
All right, okay, cool. One of the things with the psychiatrists that can be helpful, psychiatrists understandably are not keen on making educational recommendations because it's out their lane. But one of the things that might be worth having a conversation with him around is all these difficulties in crowded, busy environments, the sensory challenges and the impact that has on their anxiety, and a recommendation that there's an anxiety management tool that they're not in situations where there are more than 10 other young people at the same time, for example.
Okay.
That would indicate specialist without actually saying, I think we need a specialist setting. Because if
my concern with him is that, so we waited best part of 30 months until we got to see him, 28 months before we got into CAMHS. And they tried to take Orly down the kind of standard route of CBT before seeing a psychiatrist. And we had 2 successful meetings with a CAMHS lead person. I don't know what they are, mental health nurses, I think. And then Orly refused to go to a session and just was too anxious to get in the car. And at that point, the lead woman went, okay, I'm escalating this and I'm going to take you straight to the psychiatrist. And made the recommendation that Orly try medication before any CBT. So we're in this, I mean, I haven't had experience of psychiatrists and CAMHS before. Fucking hell. It's just like this man who just wants to hand out drugs. And although was so offended when I used the word drugs, but he I don't know how much, other than the notes. My concern is that other than the notes written by, very extensive notes, I imagine, written by the CAMHS lead woman, who's now left, which is a shame. So we had 3 hours with her. So it feels like with him, it's just been a transaction about medication. There actually hasn't been any sense of who actually are you, child. And so I don't know what he's got to write about. But when I said that to Jill this morning, she said, well, even just if he could say that Orly wasn't, was assessed and went straight into medication because they didn't feel that they would be the doctors didn't feel that Orly would be responsive to CBT until their anxiety was reduced. Just that, if he's only willing to say that, then it might be worth having that.
Yeah. How long is it since Orly started the meds?
6 weeks.
Okay, so it's very early.
It's very early. We feel that Orly feels that there's the beginning of a shift, and we had one amazing week and learned very swiftly that we don't hold on to amazing weeks. And then we've absolutely nosedived since that point. So, yeah. Yeah.
I think clearly it doesn't solve everything, or indeed very much. But in that good week, what was amazing was Orly initiating and saying, you know what, I think they're starting to work. I was taking them to hospital for an abdomen scan because of their IBS. And they just said, I'm in the car, I'm not feeling anxious. We're going to a hospital. I'm not feeling anxious. It's kind of, we're just going.
I'm not with mum.
I'm not with mum.
Yeah.
We're going, then we're coming back. And it was very relaxed and easy. And things like the bedroom door in the morning, they get up, go to the bathroom. We had a week where the bedroom door then remained wide open all day. And I, who historically am met with a lot of scowls and grimaces and get outs and so on, go in and they'd look up, they'd smile, they'd engage, even if they were preoccupied. And we haven't, although we've had a much more difficult week for a number of reasons, we think, that hasn't entirely been lost. And so, it's interesting.
It's not linear. It's not linear at all. And there are
Really
so
wanted-
many variables in the
really, really want it to be linear and
Yeah, I
only
know.
flat.
yeah, and let go of that as quickly as you can.
I've just
You'll have this.
I've had years of the kind of like that, and so then we had this 1 week, and I realized that we kept saying to each other, do not build castles and do not build castles and do not, and it's like
Just enjoy the moment.
really hurts.
The other thing as well, remind me, how old is Ollie?
17 in February.
Okay, so
yeah.
there's a very good chance there was something hormonal going on that week.
Yeah. There's a lot of
And hormones have a massive impact on the effect. And
hormonal and dysphoria, and it's like all of it.
yeah, massive.
But we know all of that, and I still built a fucking castle on it. So
I think one of the things with medication, and I have been medicated for a good long while, I'm on SSRIs, so is I still have this, but it's in a smaller window, so it's not it's kind of you know what I mean? It's more manageable. The highs aren't as high and the lows aren't as low, and there's payoff and trade-off there, but it's not as chaotic, I guess would be the way to describe it. So you're early days with meds, aren't you? Very early days.
And I think we do know that, and I think Ollie does know that. Anyway, so that's the story about the CAMHS thing. So that's a letter that
so you haven't yet seen a draft of the EHCP, or have you?
We've got it, we've amended it, we've gone backwards and forwards with amends, but we haven't had an official draft.
Okay,
if you see what I mean.
Yeah, so she literally today is reinserting the alternative provision into section F because she's got the EP's okay to do that.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we didn't ask her to send us her latest version, so maybe I'll drop her a line and say, the version that you're sending out for consultation, please send to us. Be good to have that. The one thing they watered down, which would be good to get your perspective on, was because in the first meeting she said it's absolutely fine for you to crawl all over the document and strengthen it wherever you think it needs strengthening. So we took out all the mights, coulds, likely tos, and just put do, must, will, all of that. But we also very explicitly, which we thought she'd encourage us to do, added stuff of kind of explicitly saying this tutor provision will need to begin at home before there's any, blah, blah, blah. And when she took that up her hierarchy tree, they said that can't be said in section F. What you can say is you can confirm that one-to-one tutor provision will be the first step in whatever environment is appropriate. So they didn't want it to say home explicitly.
Have you had official advice that says it needs to be at home?
No, but we know that. I mean, Ollie struggles to get in the car.
Yeah, so, I know that. No, I'm sorry, I wasn't questioning that. I was just like, that would be the workaround. If someone had said in a report, it needs to be at home, you'd be like, well, look, this professional who has assessed them and their professional expert opinion is, you can make a case for it saying at home on that basis.
Well, certainly the EP did say in his report, this is likely to begin with perhaps 3 1-hour sessions a week from a tutor, likely in the first instance to be at home. And we had strengthened that because the point we were making to her is, listen, let's have this fight with you now, not then have to start again when you insist that there's an education provision put in, and we then have to go to the college and say, right, folks, can we not rehearse this whole fucking thing again? And have it agreed.
And likely is not a very helpful word in EHCPs.
No, exactly.
I mean, what she did say today, which I thought, because I quizzed her on it, was, she's talking about going out for consultation to these 3 colleges and the Hope Valley Pathway, so 4 colleges, going out to consultation with them, getting that back. And I said, so if they all come back and say, no, we can't meet all his needs, am I right in thinking we can then put EOTAS into the EHCP? And she said, yes.
Okay.
But with the big proviso, and it would then go to panel, and
Well, I think we've got to go to panel anyway.
we make
Yeah, it has to go to panel, but and just to kind of like waterproof you a bit, what might happen is you all agree, the caseworker agrees that actually, of course, 4 settings have said they can't meet need, so it's EOTAS. It goes to panel, and panel say, yeah, we don't care that they've said they can't meet need, and name them anyway.
okay.
Seriously.
Hmm.
And then what do we do?
Appeal.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't control that. Like, it's one of those things that it's totally out of your hands. I mean, I guess there's something around making sure that the caseworker, I would write a letter to go with your paperwork to panel that lays out specifically why you believe that EOTAS is necessary. And I would look at section 61 of Children and Families Act, Education Act, let me check, which is the legal test. One sec, I get confused, I should know this. Education Act, sorry. Let me just double check. Yeah, it is section 61 of the Education Act, which is the legal test for EOTAS, which is the LA agree that it would be inappropriate for the child to be educated in a school or college setting. And the reason it would be inappropriate is because all the colleges have come back and said, we can't do it. So I would attach a letter to go to panel and to say, you know, that because of that, we believe that section I should be left blank. The provision should be made through an EOTAS arrangement with all of the provisions specified in section F and the funding for that drawn down through a personal budget.
Okay. We've written version 1 of that in the sense that Jill at our last meeting said, please write to me now explicitly saying why you believe alternative provision and tutoring at home is the essential prerequisite for the start. So we didn't name it as EOTAS.
Yeah.
We sent her that, and she said today that was a very helpful letter to get.
Right.
So that's already on the file.
Yeah.
Before it goes to consultation. If it comes back and they all say no, we can't provide, then clearly we go to your step 2.
Yeah. I mean, ask her really explicitly. She likely doesn't go to that panel meeting. It's not regular for caseworkers to go to those meetings. It's literally a pile of paper that gets put in front of the panel. Ask her what paperwork is being put in front of them and make sure that, because it might just be a form and the draft. Yeah. Just because it's on file, it doesn't mean that the panel are seeing it. That's why I'd recommend a covering letter or something similar.
Okay.
But yeah, there is a chance that they will come back and say, well, okay, fine, but we're naming them anyway. That does happen.
Yeah.
Quite regularly. It's not the end of the world. It means that that provision is then required to make sure that everything in the EHCP is being delivered. And then when you go to appeal, you can evidence why that isn't suitable. So there's kind of that balance between getting what Ollie needs in the interim and kind of like future-proofing the plan and the provision. But yeah, just to kind of like manage your expectation around that, because I think panels are a flipping law unto themselves. They do what, you know, just...
What astonishes me is how long it takes. You know, we're nearly at the end of 2023, and that means that yet another year of all his life has gone by with, well, we've been fighting for an EHCP.
That leads to something else that we might talk about, which is, you know, the how to help the child thing. But just before we get there, the other thing we were struck by today was, since February, the council has changed how they do things. So rather than having localities where the case officer remains attached to the child even when the EHCP is fixed, they've gone county-wide. And so once an EHCP has been agreed, Jill is unattached from it, and it's handed over to the people who deal with the North Derbyshire area. And she said, they're both brilliant, they're great women, they're really good. Well, we know from another family that one of them is lovely and great, but never answers emails. And it just seemed, it's that thing which, you clearly see all the time, which is this absurd thing where it means we'd have to reheat the whole bloody meal all over again, make the case to fresh people again, because on paper it's anemic, however well written it is. Whereas here we have somebody who's really got a deep understanding. And I suppose they don't.
In addition to that, sorry to further piss on your already sodden chips.
Yeah.
When and if you lodge an appeal, it will move to another caseworker. Because there are usually caseworkers who specifically deal with the HCPs in appeal because they're more experienced.
Okay.
So yeah, what that means in real terms is get as much out of Jill as you can.
Yeah.
On paper, agreed into the plan whilst she is getting it, you know.
It's a very good practice in the continuous advocacy that we have to do anyway.
Yeah. Just one question about the final plan. So you may know this already. So when it goes to panel, if it goes to panel, like there is a big if there as well, because if she can't really put it to panel until she's got those consultations back, she should give the settings at least 2 weeks to feedback on those consultations. It's not likely to go to panel before the end of November, I wouldn't imagine. When it does, they'll either say, yes, we agree, EO test, section I blank, section F, section J, go ahead, get it cracking on. Or they'll say, we're naming a setting. Or they might name a type of setting, but not specify a setting. So they might say, she needs specialist. We haven't found one yet. We'll just put specialist in section I and we'll keep looking. So there is the potential there that there's still more limbo to come, is what I'm saying. So just to be aware. And that kind of is the least satisfactory outcome, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because that can kick it into the long grass for a lot longer while they're like, oh, we are looking for somewhere, even when that place doesn't exist. So
one of the suggestions they've made is that the obvious place to start with Orly is with this personal tutor, and the encouragement has been that we put in an application for that, and because they've got a long waiting list, and they've said, you know, here's the application form, please fill it in. So Simon and I can do the first 3 pages, and the 4th page is for the child, and the questions are hideous, you know, like what was your behavior like in school, what are your favorite subjects. So for a child that is so completely and utterly turned off, the first time and the second time that I approached it with it was just like, no, fuck off. Then I went back to Jill and said, you know, this is an issue, because actually for me, I think as the medication kicks in, what we're noticing is actually that this is a harder place for Orly to be than actually feeling completely shit, because they've got no resilience at all, and so in that kind of mudgy, am I ill, am I not, who am I place, there's no sense. And yesterday I went back again and said, you know, we need to have the conversation, we're talking with Jill, and I tried a different tack with permission for Jill. Jill just said, just forget the questions, just see if you can outline with Orly what, if a tutor was to come 5 hours a week, what would Orly like to learn? Anything, what would Orly like to learn? And Orly's response is, I'm not sure I have a future, you know, just this, they're in such a hole that it kind of feels impossible. So we wondered if you had any thoughts really around, because clearly that tutor provision is only ever going to be as good as Orly's explicit description of, I want this shaped person. But if Orly can't even imagine a future, we could invent that person, but we're not necessarily going to get there. And so we're kind of, that feels slightly like we're stuck between.
So I have seen child view forms that say things like, fuck off, leave me alone, I'm not talking to you, don't fucking ask me these stupid fucking questions.
Well, if I'd filled in the form that first conversation, that's exactly what ours would have
said.
And
I think that's valid.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's evidence, you know. Okay. I think we are understandably not keen to show the less palatable sides of our children.
Well, I
And
did write. So one of the things that Jill said is, please put that in writing to me. It's really helpful evidence. So we did write an email and say, all is really struggling, can't imagine their own future. The questions aren't helpful. So she's got part one.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, keep
But
going.
that's great.
like this morning, so Theo's got his annual review coming up. And this morning, what I tend to do with him is we do it in the car, and I say, right, press record on WhatsApp, and we record it, and it sends it to my WhatsApp, and then I rewrite it. And so I was asking him about things like, and a lot of the answers to the questions were like, I hate questions like this, Mum. It's too open. I can't tell you. And so I had to be like, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about the other? And one of the things that works for us, and it may not work for you, scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want this? Scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable do you feel with this? Scale of 1 to 10, how important is this?
Mm.
Because those open questions, even when kids aren't unwell, for neurodivergent kids, are a flipping nightmare. Like there's too many variables, and there's too much anxiety around what am I actually supposed to be telling you here? What do you want to hear? So we tend to go down that route.
Repeat those questions for me. How important is?
Yeah, like, so for example, it depends.
important.
What does the actual form ask you for? Does it ask you what she's interested in, or
Yeah.
you put your hands on it? I mean, not she, they. All these pronouns are they, aren't they? Sorry.
Say he. We're much more he now.
Sorry.
I'm still trying to get a head around all of that. The form says Thanks, Heather.
I expect him to bring it in on a silver tray.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah.
In school, I have enjoyed. In school, I have not enjoyed. Subjects I have achieved in. Subjects I have found difficult. My behaviour in school in the past has been. I believe that I will succeed if. I would like help with. I would like to go to school/college at.
Okay. I mean, leading questions or what? Okay.
Really?
So
But we do also have permission to literally just write, what would Ollie like to get out of having a tutor?
Yeah. So you could ask things like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready do you feel to work with somebody who we haven't met yet? On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident would you feel letting us know whether something was working for you or not? On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to get some qualifications or some formal education? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you over the whole school thing? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So imagine, like, you're not putting words in their mouth because you're asking them, but imagine what you think if they were well and all things were level, they might say, and use that as your list of scale of 1 to 10s.
Okay, that's really useful. Thank you.
That's brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then literally report it. I
Yeah.
asked Ollie these questions. I asked them to mark it on a scale of 1 to 10. These were their responses, 1 being lowest, 10 being highest.
Yeah, that's
I did it with Theo this morning. I was amazed that he gave it like I asked him on a scale of 1 to 10 how confident he would feel getting on a train on his own, and he said 8. Flipping heck, that's gone a lot better than I expected. Going to Asda is still a 3. So we've got some work to do. But yeah, I was really like, crikey. Okay.
And I think that's useful to ask as well around travel and transport, because actually we live in the middle of nowhere, and so really if Ollie's going to engage with anyone other than coming here, we have to get in the car for at least 25 minutes.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, how capable would you feel of getting in the car and driving somewhere every day?
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident would you feel catching a bus into town?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Mm.
All of which can be good evidence for it has to be at home.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad that's helpful. Go on, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I realise you giving this advice and perspective has uncoupled something that I had completely got glued together, which is, oh God, if all the answers are a 1, they're going to say, well, we're not going to waste money setting up a tutoring offer for you because there's no point, because Orly's made it clear they're not going to engage. And of course, no, that's not the point, is it? It's like, this is what you're starting with, you know.
If all the offers are a 1, what do we need to do before we bring a tutor in to raise Orly's capacity or confidence to a place where it's not just a 1? What provision needs to be in place whilst you're on the waiting list to build that for them? You know, because it's a big thing. It's a massive thing. It would be a massive thing for any kid, even a kid who didn't have any of the challenges that our kids have. If you took a kid out of a standard school setting where they're in a classroom with 30 kids and said you're going to work with someone one-on-one, totally different dynamic, much more like, they're getting that time, but it's much more pressure. You know, you can't hide at the back. You can't, you don't get called on for answering questions. You know,
and you've got no mates to decompress it with.
And you know, Orly had English and maths online for a couple of months this year with one-to-one tutor, and kind of quite enjoyed it, and at the same time was clearly masking and completely knackered afterwards, absolutely wiped. And that's my greatest concern, because when Orly masks, then their pain levels go up. And you know, we've said it all, but that feels like a conundrum that it feels really hard to unpick and to advocate for.
It's really hard. And I think one of the things about, you know, I think it's probably fair to say, and I don't know Orly, I've never met them, but from talking to you, I think that Orly is at the very beginning of their recovery journey. You know, like, they're still not well really at all, right? And you're getting glimmers of what it might look like, but you're at the very beginning. And when you're in that, you're looking for those little glimmers, because that's what keeps you going. And it's what keeps them going, and it gives you hope, and you feel like you are moving, albeit not linearly. At the end of that, when you're absolutely finally out of the other side, you'll look back and you'll be like, I can't believe that was what I was like, oh, this is brilliant, because that feels like that's not good enough where we are now. But you can't do that on this side of that, because you have to take what you're given. You know what I mean? When you get to the other end and you have a child who says, yeah, I could get on a bus, you know, when they didn't leave their bedroom for 7 months, that's when you're like, oh, okay, I'm confident that we are properly in recovery now. That is 4 years for us. So probably from where Orly is now, and it's different for everybody, but I think one of the things that is the biggest challenges is that we underestimate how long this recovery will take.
Well, and I feel like, you know, because we've been on all these waiting lists waiting for support, it's almost like we've had 2 years that don't count. And then actually, if recovery starts now,
it's, you know, I speak to parents fairly regularly, and they're like in this, understandably, I was there as well, they're in this panic where they're like, finally the LA are saying that they'll do something, we've got to do something meaningful, otherwise they might decide they're not going to do anything anymore, you know. And so you're almost kind of like, I spoke to a parent this week and she was like, well, she quite likes trampolining, and I'm like, okay, but she hasn't left her room for 3.5 months. I think, come on. Let's not drag her to a trampoline park. That's not fair, you know. So it's kind of like, it's really tricky. It's I don't even know what I'm trying to say to you, except like, that is a common experience, that we're like, we need this to work, we've got this offer. If she can't engage, she can't engage. If there's a gap between what she feels able to do and what they're offering, that gap has to be filled. You know, that what does she need to be able to score things higher than a 1 or a 2? What does that look like?
So one of the, I just want to run this by you. So
go ahead.
One of the things that Jill said was the tutor doesn't have to be focused on English and maths, because Orly's post 16. So it can be training, it can be, you know, it's education, but it's, you know, it can look different. And so one that almost as soon as Orly started feeling better, they started completely hyperfixating on their transition journey more than anything else. Like, it's kind of, that's the thing now that has to be in place before I can do anything else.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a question for me around what we ask for, and whether it's almost like, what's Orly's motivation? If Orly's motivation is, in a year and 3 months' time, I will be able to go for top surgery, and that's the motivation, I look at it as parent and go, okay, so if that's going to get you out of bed, and that's going to give you motivation, and that's going to mean that you start looking after yourself and looking after your body, and then that's going to work better than English,
Yeah, bring it on. Yeah, definitely.
So I don't really know what I'm asking, really. It's just the sense of, because we've said all the way through, we've really laboured in the EHCP that Orly's motivated by art, and art is their kind of complete passion. And so partly I was kind of thinking, oh, well, maybe the person who comes in could work alongside Orly, not about art, but around maybe helping them think about their art as a business, or, but again, that feels so far in the future.
What if one of the questions you asked Orly was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it that your tutor is either queer or gender non-conforming?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a complete game changer. Yeah.
Because if their answer is 9.
Yeah. And I might ask the same question about being neurodivergent as well. Because the guy that Orly got on with very well before, so the person we've kind of got on in our head, was undoubtedly neurodivergent. He wasn't queer, but
so Theo's kind of like one of the most valuable relationships I think that Theo has. We have 2 friends, quite close friends, who are both trans. One of them's trans masc, one of them's trans non-binary. And neither of them are in his package, but I know that the relationships that he has with them and the conversations he can have with them are really valuable to him. And I think the other thing as well about just that thing, I don't know if I said this to you last time we spoke, I knew it was important to him to have his gender affirming surgery. He had his top surgery in June. And I was like, yeah, cool, it's important to you. Yeah, fine, we'll do it. He was like 18 and a half by then. But I didn't realize until I actually saw it for myself how much that had held him somewhere. And it was almost like within 24 hours of him waking up post-top surgery, I could see the anxiety literally fall away from him. It was unbelievable. And other people have said he's a different kid. And if you'd asked him in May, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you getting on a bus? It would have been a 3 or a 4. And I don't think you can underestimate the power of gender dysphoria and the crippling anxiety that comes with that.
Yeah.
And everyone's got to do what's right for their family. I'm just sharing from our experience that.
No, that's useful. And one of the things that we have done in the last month is we found a counsellor that Orly's happy to talk to, who's a trans woman.
Brilliant.
And so that feels great. That feels like a good piece. And actually, it's the first counsellor that Orly's been happy to talk to.
I can't remember if we talked about this last time. Have you got something in section A about Orly identifying as a gender?
Yeah, you suggested it last time, so we've put that in. Thank you for that.
And is that in F?
No, I don't think it is.
So I think something about people who understand how to sensitively manage Orly's gender expression and have an understanding of the issues faced by trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming young people.
Yeah.
That'll get mainstream off the table without even asking.
Well, it was really interesting repeating, our session with you was so useful last time, because we really, although Jill was very nice, we were very well prepared.
Good.
And we said that to her, and she was really honest. She just said, I don't know. She said, none of us have had training. None of us really know. None of us really understand it. So it would be brilliant if you make sure that paragraph is in. Please do it.
And there's no guidance yet, and we're not expecting any guidance. Like 2018, the first time that we were promised some guidance from the government around. And then it was going to be before the summer. And then Gillian Keegan said last week, it's going to probably be by Christmas. I'm working with a group of like activists and trans educators, and there's a meme going around that is Gillian in a Christmas hat, and it says underneath, "Hey guys, you reckon we can kick it back to Valentine's?" I mean, they'll kick it in the long grass, and the general election will come, and they won't.
Exactly. They'll kick it into post-general election, won't they?
So in the meantime, we are a little bit. I'll tell you what there is, though. If you look at the TNB website, it's called the Trans and Non-Binary Network, I think it's called. There's some really good resources. tnb.org.uk. Some really good resources for parents and educators on there, if you need to point people to things. Sorry, I interrupted you then. Go ahead, Simon.
So in section F, we inserted the following, which it sounds like we should strengthen. Orly will require ongoing support and understanding to be affirmed in their gender identity, including but not only the correct use of pronouns, and to support them as they make any further social transition in any education setting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we could strengthen that to make the point that any individual they work with to be
specification, something like before working with Orly, any staff member will need to be briefed fully on how to respect Orly's gender expression. And yeah, you could maybe even put something like this can be supported by conversations with Orly's trusted adults or something. You're not allowed to put parents, because parents aren't allowed to deliver any of the EHCP, but trusted adults will do it. It's so annoying. You kind of want to say, just ask their mum, but you're not allowed to.
Yeah.
I do find all of that really weird.
It's the most peculiar thing on earth. It's so weird. But
it's so they don't have to pay us, isn't it?
It is, and it's also so that there isn't any muddying of the waters in terms of who is actually responsible for provision.
Yeah. So it's probably a good
makes
thing.
sense, but I mean, it's preferable to having parents written throughout plans and then no money for it, and parents just having to deliver everything. But yeah, it's far from perfect. What we've got 15 minutes left. Have you still got questions on your list? What do you want to get out of our next 15 minutes together? Like, what would be helpful to you?
No, we don't still have questions on our list.
Okay,
No,
that's good.
There's a question sort of that emerges from what we've talked about. This business of it's really helpful, that 1 to 10 thing around the questions and so on, because we need to get an expression of how it is now for Orly right now. I really get that. Be interested in your general sense also of, of course here we are busy trying to create the right kind of support and intervention to help Orly as they are now, and to get from a 1 to a 3 to a 5, whatever it might be. But is it your view that in the end there is also time maturing, because this business of helping them articulate any kind of vision for themselves, we can both feel that kind of itch to try and help them find those words. And it sounds like, part of what we need to do is continue to deepen our acceptance of what is rather than what we might wish it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But to kind of trust that actually that comes with
maturity.
Is that a fair?
Yeah. And confidence and self-esteem and trying things when they feel able to and working out what they do and don't like. Asking a kid what they want to do for the rest of their life when they don't even feel like being here sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I wasn't an unwell. My mental health didn't take a plummet until into my 20s, but even at their age, I couldn't have told you what I wanted to do. Right. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I'm like, oh, I quite like doing this. I'll do this. See if I can get people to pay me for it until I lose interest, and then I'll find something else.
There is a continuation of that. How does an EHCP, when a child, all is 17 in February, we might not even have an EHCP or certainly anything implemented much before that point. And then they're meant to finish in at age 18, aren't they?
No, EHCPs can carry on till they're 23.
So how does it go from might to can?
It's dependent on what outcomes have been met and what need is still evidenced. So we'll give you an example with Theo, right? So we've got annual review next week, and the LA will try and cease his plan, definitely, because all of his outcomes have been met, because they were all timed for the end of this academic year. But he wants to go to university. Sideswipe. He wants to go and live out. I'm not ready. But anyway, that's a separate. We're going with it. But anyway, but one of the conversations that we had this morning when we were doing the 1 to 10 is he can't do that if he loses his psychotherapist and he loses his occupational therapist. Like, he needs them. His OT will help him with transition planning. His OT is brilliant at helping him to think about regulation. A lot of the stuff that we've done around travel training has been rooted in his OT advice, and he speaks to his psychotherapist every week. Currently, I self-fund the psychotherapist because I couldn't get it funded through the HCP, but the OT is funded through the HCP. So when I go to the review next week, I'll be like, he has met all those outcomes that we set. He is going to university. We will draw down support through the Disability Support Service and the DSA, and he still has special educational needs in the way that he still needs help around activities for daily living and emotional and sensory regulation. So I want a personal budget for his psychotherapy and his occupational therapy, and I expect the LA to pay for that to support him to go on to further study. So you might not have an EHCP that includes anything academic. It will still potentially be stuff that educates or trains.
Well, I thought that EHCPs didn't function at university level.
If they still have special educational needs that need to be met through an EHCP, they can continue to 25.
Okay. And just tell me what we've never managed. When Ollie went to the pain team, the single person that they didn't see was the OT. We've never had any OT, and my aunt was an OT, and therefore I thought it was all to do with what I knew about her work, which was kind of, putting extra bars up to stop people from
giving people things to pick things up when they can't
bend. Yeah. So tell me what an OT could do for Ollie.
So an OT, a sensory trained OT, and that's the key, will take two approaches. Their concern is, how does this person need to be supported to engage in occupational activity? So that's basically doing things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean work, it's doing things. So it's activities for daily living, personal care. So it takes into account, the personal care stuff is the obvious, like washing, bathing, being able to feed yourself. But the activities for daily living are things like travel, financial management, independent living skills, being able to shop, being able to plan meals, all that stuff. If you think about an adult that didn't need additional support, would do without needing any of those things. So for us, our OT has taken like the two-pronged approach of supporting Theo in understanding his sensory profile. So understanding what dysregulation feels like, how to articulate it, how to advocate for himself when he needs. So, you know, being able to just get up and leave, and being able to say, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to go to bed. Or one of his big challenges with his demand avoidance is time. So being able to say, I will do it, but I'll do it in 10 minutes, that kind of stuff. And activities for daily living. So travel, independent shopping, financial management, all that kind of stuff, applying for his driving license, all those kind of things. So when we've got children and young people that are our kids' age, it's that stuff that an OT can really be helpful with. Is
amazing. How do we get?
It's massive.
I mean, that for me, that's what the tutor should be coming in and doing. You know,
Yeah.
that's actually more valuable than anything else.
Yeah. So we've got an independent. We had one of the things I did spend money on was an independent OT assessment,
Okay.
and we had an assessment with them on, they're a sensory integration trained OT, and they made recommendations for what provision needed to look like around preparation for adulthood and activities for daily living. And then they briefed what you would have as a tutor. She's called a learning support mentor. And they meet with Theo once a month. And the whole time for the past 18 months plus, I've met with them at the same time, but Theo has now started meeting with them on his own. The idea being that when he goes to university, that will continue. So he'll meet with his OT once a month. And she's been great for things like thinking about transition to uni, thinking about what he needs in place, thinking about planning, thinking about lists, thinking about, you know, we have a blackboard, and I mean, we don't use it, but but one of the things he's very keen on now that has really come on in the past few months is cooking. He cooks all the meals in our house now. I don't cook. He does all the meal prep. I have to get the ingredients, but he makes nearly every meal. And that's come from nothing, you know, like 12 months ago, could make a fish finger sandwich maybe. And that's been under the guidance of the OT, him saying, I'd like to do this. The OT saying to his learning support mentor, can you take him shopping and help him start to think about how you plan shopping lists and plan meals? Can you do some basic meal prep with him? And it's grown out of that. So, go on.
So when you made the case that the OT should be covered by the council as part of your budget, did you have to justify why, in inverted commas, I know this is absurd, but I'll say it anyway, you couldn't do that as Theo's parent? Because a lot of what you're talking about could easily be.
Well, it's what we've done for Maya, isn't it?
Yeah, because because his challenges with that are not the challenges of a non-disabled child. They're the challenges of a child with special educational needs.
Okay. Great.
So we would all do that for our kids. Of course we would.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in the knowledge of what sensory integration looks like for autistic kids, and understanding how much of a massive impact that has on their ability to do those everyday things, and helping them to have a vocabulary around that and to understand that for themselves. So it's kind of like, it's not just as simple as showing them how to make a shopping list. It's them understanding what they need to do to get themselves to a place where they can make a shopping list. Do you know what I mean? How to regulate themselves.
And you mentioned another word that I don't understand. What's a learning support mentor? Who is that?
So we have we made it up. But I quite often say to OTAS families, ask for a learning support mentor. It sounds like, basically, our learning support mentor is not a tutor. So her name is Carol. She's kind of like a PA, but we didn't call her a PA because the PA rates for our local council are shockingly low. So she's basically Theo's, when he had his fully OTAS package, she was Theo's consistent adult. We had her for, I want to say 15 hours a week when we had the fully OTAS. It did shrink and it's now down to next to nothing, and I'm still funding it, but it's fine. But she would come, she did everything. So she basically was like a renter nana. Do you know what I mean? So she did the stuff that really, as a parent, I would have been doing if I was doing my job properly, or if I didn't have a job to do, so she would take him out to galleries, museums, but it was always like she helped him get his passport. She helped him get his driving license. They went on the train to Leeds. They'd go out for food. They what else have they done a lot of? Oh, they used to go to Pilates once a week together. You know, like she was basically his regulation partner for when he wanted to be outside the house. But kind of like with the experience and under the direction of the OT. So I would speak to the OT like every couple of weeks, and then I would say to Carol, the OT's made these suggestions, and Carol would be like, cool. We had her trained in low arousal approach. I made sure she knew her way around PDA and low demand and trauma informed stuff. And she's just a very good person. And she has an autistic kid. So, but yeah, she was basically she wasn't a tutor. She didn't do any formal learning with him at all. He did have tutors separate to that, but she was like his preparation for adulthood buddy, I guess.
So all of that came through an EOTIS package.
Yes.
Oh, I wish we'd had this conversation a while ago.
But you're still in draft, so that's okay. I think maybe what would be helpful, if you want to, I've got a new tool that I'm using that's like I'm still testing it, but I'm happy to throw your stuff through it. So it's an AI tool that I haven't developed the AI tool, I'm not that clever, but I've developed some instructions that I use AI to give me a report, and it's like an overwhelm buster. So put your stuff in it, give it the questions, tell it what to look for, and it throws out a report at the end. Quite clever. But I can do that for you. And part of that is it looks at specification and quantification. It also looks at neurodivergent affirming language, and it looks at preparation for adulthood. So we could throw your paperwork through it and see what it gives us if you want. It's in beta testing, so it's like I'll give it to you. I can't promise that it's going to be helpful, but if you want to do it, I'm happy to do it for you. Do you want me to do it for you?
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that would be great.
I'll ask Jill to send me the latest version.
Get the latest draft. Is everything in it in terms of all the advice, anything that you've fed into? Like, I know that you mentioned your psychiatrist, but there isn't anyone else involved who's given you anything to feed into the plan that hasn't gone in yet.
No, so we've only had an EP, and then Ollie's got a chronic pain diagnosis and an autism diagnosis. So those are the three elements to it.
And they're in there.
They're in there.
Well,
Okay.
they're referenced.
Yeah.
Have you got the ASD diagnostic report?
Yeah.
The chronic pain diagnostic letter, and what was the third thing you said?
Well, obviously the EP.
Although
EP.
We didn't see his report.
We did. He sent us his report.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yes, he did. He did.
Yeah.
He did. So we have his full report, as well as obviously a lot of it then appears in the EHCP draft.
Yeah, send me those 3 documents and your draft as you have it. I'll throw it through the tool and we'll see what it gives us. I'll wang it back to you and you can see. It comes under different headings. So it comes under, let me just find one. You're seeing behind the curtain now. Keep sending them to people now. This is so clever. How long did this take you? I'm like, well, to actually write it all, it took me ages, but now it doesn't take me very long at all. Let me see. So if I get one up and show you, I'm not going to show you because it's got other people's stuff on it, but it does checking empowering neurodiversity affirming language. It makes recommendations for changes there. It does a case history, outlines parents' position, summarizes the HCP. Then it checks the diagnosis list. It lists your formal diagnosis, but it also indicates any that are indicated but not listed. It checks for specification and quantification. It checks all the provision in F is specified and quantified, and it lists clarifying questions where it isn't. Checks for neurodivergent affirming language, checks if there's anything in section B that hasn't got a matched provision in section F. It checks the case for EOTAS. It does preparation for adulthood. It checks your outcomes are SMART. It checks for PDA and neurodivergent affirming language. And then it outlines what it says about speech and language, occupational therapy, mental health, and any other therapies. And it gives you like a 6 or 7 page report.
Wow.
You've got to pick through it and make sure it's right because it's AI generated. So at the minute, I'm not checking in detail. I'm just seeing if the tool works. But if you want me to send you one, I'll absolutely do it. If you throw me your stuff, I'll pop it through the tool and see what it throws
Thank you.
out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heidi.
You're welcome. Is this our last call together?
It is for the moment, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Heidi's someone that you can't get another call with. We had to sign up to Unstoppable Parent to get to.
Well, you can't,
Well, we
but
did.
so behind the scenes, I have craftily got a little bit of capacity for one-to-one. So there is a one-to-one offer. I'm full at the minute, but it's an 8-week offer. So I've got families on it who will finish end of November, beginning of December.
Okay.
So there will potentially be room. But message me if stuff comes up and you're like, we need to talk to you again. Well, now that you're in the funnel, so to speak, it's just really difficult because anytime I ever say I've got one-to-one, it just and it also, it's not fair. That I know who I can help and I know who I can't help. And if I put a thing out saying I've got one-to-one, I get people who I can't really help coming to me. Whereas I know if people have been through Unstoppable Parent, there's a very good chance I can help them because they already know how I work. They already have that baseline. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, totally.
But if you send me an email today with those pieces of paper on it, even if it's see if you can get the new draft, but even if you can't, send me the existing draft. I'll wang it through the tool and I'll get it back to you before the end of the week.
Amazing.
Thanks, Heidi.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Keep me posted, yes?
Yeah.
We'll do.
Don't be
Great.
strangers. Let me know what's happening.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right then.
Thanks
Take
so
care.
much.
Speak to you
Bye-bye.
soon. Bye.
Bye.